When Prince William, with unwavering resolve to protect the Windsor legacy, issues a ruthless decree stripping Camilla's family of all royal privileges, the Queen Consort faces a devastating blow, thrusting her to the brink of betrayal and despair. In the tempest of palace power struggles, where the shadow of Princess Diana still looms, and whispers of conspiracy spread, Camilla fights to secure a place for her descendants, even if the cost is the very dynasty she has devoted her life to serving. Can she overcome Charles's chilling silence and William's unrelenting wrath, or will she be erased entirely from royal history? A gripping tale of loyalty, revenge, and heartbreaking loss that will keep you riveted. What will Camilla do when the world turns its back on her? The October morning at Clarence House carried a biting chill, as if winter had arrived uninvited. Pale sunlight filtered through ancient stained glass windows, casting a feeble glow on the faded Persian rug in the small drawing room where Camilla Queen Consort sat. On the polished mahogany table, a steaming cup of Earl Grey, her comfort since simpler days, sat beside a cream-colored envelope sealed with the crimson stamp of the royal household. It lay there unassuming, yet ominous, like a harbinger of doom. Camilla, draped in a soft gray cashmere sweater, sipped her tea, her gaze drifting to the garden beyond the window. She hesitated to open the envelope, as if instinct warned her of its weight. But with the composure of a woman who had weathered countless storms, she reached for a small silver knife, slit the seal, and extracted a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no preamble, just a cold surgical paragraph. The memorandum declared that all ceremonial titles, honorary positions, and privileged access for Camilla's family, her son Tom Parker, Bowles' daughter Laura Lopes, and grandchildren like Freddie, were revoked effective immediately. No explanation, no room for appeal. The final line, bolded like a guillotine's blade, read, "By order of the Prince of Wales." Camilla didn't reread it. The paper slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the table. Her hands trembled violently, and the teacup slipped shattering on the marble floor with a piercing crash that ruptured the room's stillness. A raw scream tore from her chest, not a sob, but a primal blend of rage, anguish, and betrayal. She surged to her feet, slamming her fist on the table, sending an antique porcelain vase, a wedding gift from Charles, crashing to join the broken shards. A family portrait capturing a rare moment of joy with Charles, Tom, Laura, and Freddie was yanked from its shelf and hurled to the floor. Glass splintered, mirroring her fractured heart. "They've done it!" she cried, her voice breaking in tears. "They've started erasing me." She stumbled to the antique telephone, dialing her closest confidant with shaking fingers. "They want me gone!" she shouted into the receiver, her voice choking, barely coherent. "They want my family wiped from royal history." On the other end, her advisor, a loyal companion, through decades of scandal, offered only silence. No words could quell the tempest ravaging Camilla's soul. A single question burned in her mind. Who wielded this merciless blade? And had Charles, the husband she adored, turned against her? Whispers among staff hinted at a deeper conspiracy, a power struggle poised to thrust Camilla into a battle against the very heart of the Windsor dynasty. From the hallway, a young equerry hidden behind the oak door witnessed the scene. Later, he confided to a colleague, his voice trembling. The air in Clarence House that day was like a silent storm, ready to devour everything. "I've never seen the Queen Consort like that," as if her entire world collapsed in an instant. No one was forewarned. Even the closest aides privy to every palace maneuver learned of the decree through internal systems. The announcement arrived like a military order, emotionless, unyielding. Camilla, who had endured years of public scorn to stand by Charles, now felt betrayed by the family she called her own. In the cold room, amid the wreckage of teacup and picture frame, she stood alone, her heart in ruins. While Clarence House drowned in Camilla's emotional maelstrom, Kensington Palace exuded a calculated calm, the stillness before a meticulously planned battle. The security briefing room, with its dark oak-paneled walls and soft glow from crystal chandeliers, radiated the weight of authority. Prince William entered, his demeanor composed yet resolute, like a general marching to war. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, his every movement exuded strength and purpose. A few silver streaks in his hair, earned from years of burdens, aged him beyond his years. but his piercing eyes burned with unyielding resolve. Trailing him was a select group of senior communications advisors and royal household officials. They moved in silence, their faces grim, as if attending a moment that could reshape the monarchy's history. On the long ebony table, a thick dossier stamped in red with Project Windsor Core, a code name known only to the inner circle, lay waiting. This was no impulsive act, but the culmination of months of preparation, heated debates, and sleepless nights weighing the cost of power. Each page was a calculated step in a strategy to redefine the monarchy's future. William took his seat at the table's head, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on the dossier. Without pleasantries, he lifted a pen, its nib gliding across the paper with the decisiveness of a future king. His signature, bold and unwavering, formalized the updated royal protocol, stripping Camilla's family of all ceremonial privileges. It was more than an administrative act. It was a declaration that the era of leniency was over, that the Windsor dynasty would no longer be diluted by external ties. An advisor in the corner nodded subtly as if witnessing a historic pivot. Raised under Queen Elizabeth II's stern tutelage, William carried a fierce belief in the primacy of blood succession. From childhood, her lessons at Buckingham Palace echoed in his mind. One day you will make hard choices to protect the crown. Let not sentiment cloud your judgment. Those words, a guiding star, fueled his actions against Camilla. Camilla's relentless efforts to integrate her family, Tom, Laura, and grandchildren like Freddie, into royal events had crossed a line William could not tolerate. He saw her actions not just as overreach, but as a direct threat to the monarchy's purity. Each appearance of Freddie in a ceremonial photo, each honor bestowed on Laura, felt like a crack in the royal foundation, a crack that could widen, destabilizing the kingdom. For William, this was not personal. It was a war to preserve the legacy he would pass to his children. In a rare moment of vulnerability after the advisors left and the chandeliers dimmed, William retreated to his private apartment at Kensington Palace. The cozy sitting room, warmed by a crackling fireplace, and the scent of burning wood offered a brief respite from his princely mask. Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, known as the monarchy's peacemaker, sat in a green velvet armchair, cradling a mug of herbal tea. She looked up at William, her eyes gentle but sharp, reading the turmoil within him. Standing by the window, gazing at the fog-shrouded October garden, William spoke, his voice low but resolute. If we don't stop Camilla, Britain will have two courts, one Windsor, one hers. His words were not just a statement, but a vow from an heir bearing the weight of the throne. He turned to Kate, seeking her silent approval. She nodded faintly, a gesture small but profound, signaling her readiness to stand by him in this fight. Kate, renowned for her calm and diplomacy, had been the first to sound the alarm about Camilla's maneuvers. Months earlier, at a lavish Buckingham Palace charity gala, she overheard a discreet conversation between Camilla and a trusted equerry. Under the glittering chandeliers, Camilla, with calculated subtlety, spoke of securing places for Tom and Laura in official royal portraits. She mentioned plans to introduce Freddie and Gus to informal ceremonial roles, to familiarize them with the public and build their future image. Kate's sharp intuition recognized Camilla's intent, not just maternal protection, but a long-term strategy to embed non-Windsor blood at the monarchy's core. That night in their private apartment, as a bedside lamp cast soft shadows, Kate told William, "She doesn't just want to be Queen Consort. She wants her family to be royal, equal to us." Her warning pierced William's lingering doubts, igniting a steely resolve. "She's gone too far," he said, his voice a verdict. From that moment, Project Windsor Core was born, its sole aim to return the monarchy to its bloodline core. No exceptions, no mercy. In Clarence House's dimly lit study, the crystal chandelier's faint glow barely touched the oak-paneled walls, adorned with centuries-old royal portraits. Camilla sat alone in a red velvet armchair, her eyes lost in a sea of memories. Before her, an untouched glass of red wine sat beside a small frame photo, Freddie and Gus in ceremonial dress at Charles's coronation, their radiant smiles once her greatest solace. Now they were a knife twisting in her heart. Memories of her royal journey flooded back, vivid and painful, like an old film reel. Camilla recalled the early days as Queen Consort, cautiously carving a place for her family. Not out of ambition or greed, but a simple, almost primal desire. She wanted Tom, Laura, and her grandchildren recognized as part of the dynasty she'd sacrificed everything to serve. She had quietly instructed the royal household to prioritize Tom and Laura at official events. At Charles's coronation, a pinnacle of her life, Camilla ensured Freddie and Gus appeared in official photos, standing proudly beside key Windsors. Seeing them in their ceremonial suits holding Charles's hand with sparkling eyes convinced her she'd achieved something profound, not just for herself, but for her lineage. Their smiles warmed her heart, a quiet victory in the cold royal machine. "I didn't ask for the throne," she whispered in a moment of weakness, her voice trembling, nearly breaking. "I just wanted them seen as family." Those words, though, spoken to an empty room, were a confession to herself, to the years she'd fought to belong amid love and duty. But that pure desire had drawn her into an unforgiving war. As William tightened protocol with military precision, Camilla felt cornered. Her every move, Freddie's minor event appearances, lobbying for Laura's photo ops, was tracked, analyzed, and blocked by William's team. In a flash of rage fueled by helplessness, Camilla ordered a trusted media advisor to leak a compromising photo of Kate. Snapped at a private Scottish estate dinner, it showed Kate with slightly mussed hair and weary eyes after a second glass of wine, a rare and perfect moment. The image, though harmless, was Camilla's warning she wasn't easily sidelined and would play dirty if pushed. Kate, ever composed, refused to stoop to Camilla's level. Instead, she struck back with devastating elegance, requesting Freddie's exclusion from Trooping the Color, a major royal event. The change seemed minor, a guest list tweak, but to Camilla it was a gut punch. Freddie, her pride and joy, once waving from Buckingham Palace's balcony, was now erased from the royal stage. When the news reached her, Camilla sat frozen in her study, gripping the desk, tears streaming down her face. "They don't just want my place," she thought. "They want to erase everything I love." The Clarence House reading room was thick with tension, as if the air itself absorbed the weight of unspoken words. Dim light from a brass desk lamp illuminated Camilla's haggard face, her eyes red from crying. She sat in an armchair facing Charles, the husband she'd loved and sacrificed everything for. But an invisible chasm separated them deeper than words could bridge. "You're the king," Camilla said, her voice choking each word, a struggle. "How could you let him do this to me?" Her hands gripped the chair, clinging to a fading hope that Charles would rise, defend her, and reclaim what was stolen. Charles, in a silver-gray suit, sat motionless, staring at the bare branches, swaying in the October wind outside. "I no longer control William," he murmured, barely audible, as if speaking to himself. His soft words hit like a hammer, shattering Camilla's last shred of faith. Within Charles raged a silent, agonizing battle. He loved Camilla, the woman who stood by him through his darkest years, when the world vilified him over Diana. She was his anchor, his confidant, the light in his bleakest moments. But Charles was also a king and a father. He saw in William not just an heir, but the embodiment of a modern unified monarchy, unfractured by peripheral ties. William's vision, a dynasty centered on Windsor blood, unyielding to dilution, was one Charles, though heartbroken, believed necessary. Months earlier, in a private Buckingham Palace meeting, William had confronted his father, presenting a dossier detailing Camilla's family expenses, from Tom's overseas tours to Laura's indirect grants. He highlighted Tom's scandals, from controversial media remarks to shady business ties. "The public is restless," Father William said, his voice calm but cutting. "If we don't act, the monarchy will lose the respect we've spent decades rebuilding." Charles, though his heart ached, nodded. He knew that to save the monarchy, he had to sacrifice what Camilla cherished most, her family. His silence in the months that followed wasn't weakness, but a painful acceptance, a choice he could never voice to his wife. Charles's complicity in William's plan was a secret Camilla never suspected. To her, he was the husband who always shielded her from the world's scorn. But as whispers from equerries revealed the truth, she realized the man she loved might have betrayed her, not with words, but with his damning silence. An elderly advisor, a veteran of 3 reigns, stood outside the reading room, hearing Camilla's sobs. He turned to a colleague, his voice low with regret. "His Majesty reigns, but the prince has begun to rule." His words, though quiet, were prophetic, signaling that power in the Windsor dynasty was shifting, and Camilla, Queen Consort, was no longer its center. In the wake of her confrontation with Charles, Camilla's despair hardened into a reckless resolve to fight back. Alone in her Clarence House study, surrounded by leather-bound books and the faint scent of aged paper, she penned a letter to a trusted friend, a former journalist with deep ties to London's tabloid world. The letter laid bare her anguish, detailing her belief that William's actions were not just to protect the crown, but a personal vendetta rooted in loyalty to his late mother, Diana. "He wants to erase me and my children," she wrote, her handwriting shaky with emotion, "to ensure the Windsor name isn't tainted by those he deems unworthy." Camilla intended the letter as a private catharsis shared only with a confidant, but in a moment of carelessness, she entrusted it to a junior aide, unaware that this aide, disgruntled with palace politics, had been approached by a tabloid editor with a lucrative offer for inside scoops. Days later, the letter was leaked to a major British tabloid, its contents splashed across the front page: Camilla's desperate plea, "William wants to destroy my family." The public's reaction was swift and fierce. Social media, particularly X, erupted with a mix of sympathy for Camilla's plight and outrage at her audacity in challenging William, a beloved figure, for his modernizing vision and connection to Diana's legacy. Posts dissecting the letter's every line trended globally. Some saw Camilla as a tragic figure, a woman fighting for her family in a ruthless institution. Others branded her a schemer, accusing her of manipulating public sentiment to cling to power. The scandal peaked when a popular morning talk show hosted a panel discussion with a prominent royal commentator reading excerpts from the letter live on air. "This isn't the voice of a queen," the commentator declared, "but of a mother pushed to the brink, lashing out in a way that could tear the monarchy apart." The show cut to a montage of Camilla with Tom and Laura at public events, interspersed with clips of William and Kate at charity functions, subtly reinforcing the narrative of a divided royal house. At Kensington Palace, William was livid. In a rare break from his composure, he summoned his communications team for an emergency meeting. "This isn't just a leak," he said, his voice low but seething. "It's an attack on the monarchy's future." Kate, seated beside him, placed a calming hand on his, but her eyes betrayed her fury. She had long suspected Camilla's willingness to play dirty, but this public betrayal crossed a line. "We need to respond," Kate urged, her voice steady. "Not with words, but with actions that show the public where the monarchy's heart lies." William's team swiftly orchestrated a counteroffensive. Within hours, curated posts from a Kensington Royal highlighted William and Kate's recent youth charity work, emphasizing their commitment to a modern, inclusive monarchy. A subtle but pointed statement reaffirmed the royal focus on core duties and direct succession. The message was clear: Camilla's family was no longer part of the monarchy's future. The scandal deepened Camilla's isolation. At Clarence House, she watched the news in horror, realizing her private pain had become a public spectacle. She tried contacting Tom and Laura, but both were hounded by the press and advised by aides to stay silent. Freddie, too young to grasp the drama's gravity, texted her, "Why is everyone mad at us?" His innocent question shattered Camilla, and she locked herself in her room, refusing even her most loyal staff. Charles, torn between his wife's pain and the monarchy's stability, made a rare appearance at a conservation event, avoiding mention of the scandal. His silence, interpreted by the press as tacit support for William, further alienated Camilla. In a moment of clarity, she realized her attempt to fight back had only strengthened William's resolve and turned the public against her. The leaked letter meant as her shield had become a sword cutting deeper into her family's fragile ties and her place in the monarchy. Fury and despair, amplified by the public scandal, pushed Camilla to a breaking point where reason and emotion blurred. In Charles's private library at Clarence House, a small room with dusty oak shelves, she stood alone, her breathing ragged. The leaked letter, her last-ditch effort to protect her family, had backfired, making her the target of public scorn. In a frenzy, she slammed her hand against an old wooden cabinet where Charles kept relics of his past mementos he rarely spoke of but never discarded. The drawer burst open, spilling papers onto the cold marble floor. Camilla knelt, her trembling hands picking up a yellowed sheet, its elegant slanted handwriting illuminated by the brass lamp. She froze, her breath catching. It was Diana's handwriting, the Princess of Wales whose shadow never left the monarchy. The page clearly, a diary entry was penned in blue ink, its words searing into Camilla's mind. If one day my son becomes a father, remind him the throne is not to be shared with strangers. Teach my grandchildren to guard their name, for not everyone who smiles at them belongs to the blood they carry. Each word was a dagger to Camilla's heart. She sank to the floor, clutching the paper, tears streaming down her face. Even from the grave she controls her son's mind. She whispered, her voice trembling with awe and bitterness. In that moment, Diana felt not just a memory, but a living force guiding William from beyond. The diary entry wasn't just a mother's note, it was a prophecy, a sentence for Camilla, the woman once blamed for destroying Diana's happiness. Rage flared, then faded into crushing despair. Camilla rose, still gripping the paper as if it were proof of her defeat. The letter scandal had worsened everything, alienating the public and press. And now Diana's words confirmed she could never win this war. It wasn't just her against William, but against Diana's immortal legacy, a legacy Camilla, even as Queen Consort, could never touch. Days later, in a tense closed-door meeting at Buckingham Palace, Camilla faced William. The dark conference room held only a few senior equerries and legal advisors, all silent as ghosts. Camilla, in a deep blue silk coat, stood tall, but her eyes blazed with uncontained fury. "You're still avenging your mother," she said, her voice icy yet trembling, pointing at William. "Even though she's in the ground." William, seated at the table's head in a charcoal suit, didn't flinch. He met her gaze, his eyes calm but frigid, like a king passing judgment. "I'm protecting the throne for my children," he replied, each word deliberate. "Not for your grandchildren." The room fell silent, save for Camilla's heavy breathing. No one dared speak, no one broke the charged moment. After a pause, Camilla turned and left, her steps heavy, but proud, like a fallen warrior, unbowed. The oak door slammed shut, leaving a stifling atmosphere behind. Back at Clarence House, Camilla locked her private room, canceling all engagements, refusing visitors or meetings. Her aides, though worried, obeyed, too afraid to question her. Charles, informed of the confrontation, rushed to Clarence House, standing outside her door, knocking softly. "Camilla, please talk to me," he pleaded, his voice hoarse with pain. Silence answered. Through an aide, Camilla sent a chilling message: "I have nothing left to say to anyone in this dynasty. Not to my husband, least of all to Diana's sons." That night, as London slept, an internal update was sent to all royal ceremonial departments. Unsigned but unmistakably William's, it was brief and brutal. "All ceremonial ties, honorary titles, and public appearance rights related to the Queen Consort's kin are terminated immediately. No exceptions." The email, though mundane, was a death knell, erasing Camilla's family from the Windsor dynasty. The next morning, Clarence House was cloaked in an eerie silence, as if the house held its breath before an irreparable tragedy. Camilla no longer cried or raged. She sat in her private room, the faint window light casting her face in shadow, drained of emotion. In her hands was an old photo of Freddie in ceremonial dress at Charles's coronation, beaming beside his grandfather, eyes alight with joy. It was once her proudest moment, a silent triumph, when she believed her family had a place in the dynasty. Now it was a painful relic of what was lost. "I thought I belonged here," she whispered, as if to herself, her voice barely audible. "That my children did too." The words carried no hope, only the bitter acceptance of a woman stripped of everything. The letter scandal in Diana's diary had extinguished her spirit. The public, once a hoped-for ally, had turned on her. Her family, her greatest love, was banished from the royal stage, and she, though Queen Consort, felt like an outsider in the dynasty. The state opening of Parliament that weekend filled London's streets with flags and cheers. At Buckingham Palace's balcony, the royal family greeted the public, but Camilla and her kin were absent. The year's official royal photo released to the press featured only Windsor blood, William, Kate, their children, and select senior royals. Tom, Laura, Freddie, all were erased as if they'd never existed in the dynasty's history. On the royal website, a subtle but seismic change was made the night before. The Queen's family section, once detailing Tom, Laura, and Camilla's grandchildren, was removed. In its place, a curt note: "Information about the Queen Consort's family has been moved to archives." A single sentence, but it was the final blow, bearing the legacy Camilla had spent a lifetime building. At Clarence House, a heavy pall hung over the staff. From equerries to maids, all moved quietly, wary of disturbing the fragile silence. A young aide new to the household paused outside Camilla's door, raising a hand to knock with a minor report. He stopped his gaze, lingering on the oak door, sensing the grief within. He turned away, muttering to a colleague, "There's nothing left to save. It's all been rewritten in blood and tears." Camilla, in her darkened room, sat motionless, staring at the gray London sky. For the first time in years, she felt not like a queen consort, not part of the Windsor dynasty, but just a woman her dreams shattered, her family erased from royal history. Outside, the world moved on, with ex-posts praising William and Kate, news lauding the monarchy's future. But for Camilla, time had stopped, leaving her in a profound loneliness no words could capture, and no one, not even Charles, could pull her back from.